Hi, welcome to class one of research methods. Again, this is probably one of the classes a lot of folks, when they look at it, they're like, oh, it's going to be such a boring class. It can be, I mean, if you really have no interest in learning something new and how to find where to look for good information, then I guess it is a class. But in my opinion, this is probably one of the most important classes, not only for um, folks in exercise science or kinesiology or those backgrounds or really into science backgrounds, but I think in general, this could be a very helpful class to pretty much everybody out there. There's, especially in our field, there's more misinformation than good information when it comes to things like fitness and nutrition. And there's so many people out there trying to sell you things that you absolutely don't need. And so people are trying to get you on certain diets, on certain workout programs, supplements, and 90% of the time they make it sound really good, and they tell you, oh yeah, go to this website, go to this, go to that, and people don't know how to find those things, and they don't know what real research is. And so again, understanding, when people are actually performing real research and where you can go to find that research of what they've done and how to read it and understand it and interpret it, it opens up a whole new world of information and helps you be a better consumer of things because you know where to go find research that someone has done. Now, again, you going and looking for something is not research, and you're going to see that here in this first chapter. A lot of people think that's doing research. No, that's doing your own research for your own understanding of things, but you're about to find out what research actually is. So let me share the screen so we can go to the PowerPoints and we'll get started. Okay, so chapter one, this will give you kind of an overview of what the rest of this book is going to go through. All right, so hopefully you guys have the book and you're reading your chapters as we go through these slides. All right, so at many institutions, there are opportunities for students to become involved in research. Again, this is for my students at Kaiser. We honestly just don't have that. It's again, it's really hard. I've actually looked into trying to do this for you guys. But one of the problems we run into is the way that we schedule classes 1 month at a time. Trying to get research subjects in through the other faculty and students also poses a problem the way that their programs run, where at traditional universities, this is a bit easier to do. Again, you usually have a set schedule for about 3 months at a time. And during that 3 months, is a lot of our type of research we do either lasts like 3 months, 6 months, or a year. So again, when people have set schedules, it's a lot easier to get them in and out and do those type of things. And so again, if you're looking to do research, those of you that are interested as you're thinking about grad school, finding grad schools that are really big into doing this. In particular, I know that there's a master's program starting up at Nova here this fall of 2020, and a lot of my students that are graduating, I've spoke to you about it. Great professors up there. You'll learn a lot. They'll do a lot of research up there too, which is amazing. You'll get to be a part of a lot of research projects and get published. And so I'd really encourage any of you of my Kaiser students that are watching this, if you're thinking of exercise science as a master's program, that'd be a good one to look into. Okay. And again, when you can get involved in research, it really opens your eyes up to how we go about trying to find as much truth as possible. And a lot of times we don't quite find exactly what we want all the time either, and that's good. All right. So research is not looking up known information. Okay, it's not fact. That's you doing your own personal research, right? So you're looking for information that benefits you, that somebody else has actually done research on, right? What this is it's careful, objective, systematic, structured process where we solve problems and answer questions, right? So you know, for example, you have a question like, does this supplement help with this? And there's nobody's ever looked at it, right? And so you start thinking, well, let's see if it does, right? So then you go through an IRB, which is an institutional review board. I'm kind of getting ahead of some things that we'll go over later in the chapters. So you'll present this idea that you want to have people take a supplement and you want to see how it affects them. And in particular, does it help with a certain condition, or will you take it with exercise or whatever else? You know, that plus exercise doesn't make any difference compared to just doing the exercise alone, right? And so you'll figure out how you want to experiment, how, you know, and how you can make an experiment will actually determine that the supplement was actually doing something. So again, a lot of times you'll have a group that gets the experimental supplement, you'll get another group that gets a placebo, maybe you'll get another group that gets a similar supplement, and you'll put them all through the same protocols, right? So they all do the same exercises for the same amount of time. You know, or if it's not an exercise one, you don't do that. You have them do whatever it is over that period of time. And we look to see if that group that's taking the supplement gets better benefits than the other two groups. You know, the group that's on a similar supplement or the group that's getting the placebo supplement, right? And so we try to answer that question or solve that problem, you know, or solve the problem, okay? You know, right now, I'm sure there's lots and lots of experiments going on with the COVID-19. You know, they're trying to figure out, you know, how do we make a vaccine for that will combat the virus or prevent against getting the virus. So right now, that's what they're doing. They're setting up experiments, they're running tests and things like that. I mean, they may have already found one, but again, you got to run it enough times to see, does this actually work, right? And so that does take some time, you know, in doing those things. And so again, this is what we do in science, right? So we have a question that we want to answer or a problem that we want to solve, and we go from there. So here's some example question. What interventions in diet and exercise can best reverse the obesity epidemic? You know, that's kind of $1 million question. Not that the person that actually comes up with this is going to be making millions of dollars, because again, you know, one of the things that we know is people need more exercise, and they need to take control of the food, especially, you know, the amount of food that they take in and things like that. But the $1 million question is there a best method in getting people to be better about what they eat, to, you know, become, you know, somebody that exercises most days? Again, it's not something people have to do every single day, but they're just exercise most days, or they just live a much more active lifestyle in general. You know, and how do we get them to do that, adhere to that, and make that just part of their life? You know, and it really is. It's a really good question. You know, and it may be one of those ones that we can't ever answer. It may be, you know, I mean, my personal opinion is you've got to take every individual at the individual level and work with them. You know, I mean, I think that's really the big thing, is we're always trying to look at, you know, like, is there a strategy that works for everybody? And really the strategy that I believe is to have a, you know, establish a personal working relationship with every client that needs your help in this matter. And you've got to spend more time listening than telling them what to do, because that's the biggest issue, is they've got needs and wants and things that they feel are stumbling blocks. And you've got to help them to overcome those things, to help meet their needs, to help meet those wants, and help them create a lifestyle that works for them. And that's the thing, you know, I mean, I look around at a lot of the folks that are in my field that, you know, are in great shape, and, you know, I take good care of myself as well. You know, and we all do a lot of different things. You know, I mean, it's not a one size fits all, you know. And I think that's, you know, the big thing is it's not us finding something that works actually for people in need. It's finding something, it's basically teaching some type of philosophy of this nature to those who are out there helping folks. Because that's the problem. We have a lot of people out there trying to create a one-stop shop. Okay, this is the diet for everybody, this is the workout for everybody, and it's never going to be that way. Okay. Another great question: how can athletes avoid concussions? Right. So a lot of it comes down to protective equipment. In sports like football, good tackling techniques. You know, uh, Doing headers in soccer and things like that. Learning how to have good technique in hitting the ball and things of that nature. But then on the other hand, that we're looking at things with nutrition, right? Over again, I've spent some time with the professors over at Nova. Dr. Antonio and Tartar, and actually one of their PhD candidates, Mr. Thomas, have all been doing some really good research with concussions. They've been doing some research on how creatine, and Dr. Peacock, I think, spinning on these as well, how creatine affects concussions. And so they're looking at not only some of the neurological things that happen, but they're looking at, some nutritional things that may help with that. I know that I've heard Dr. Peacock also talk about, not only creatine, but hydration helps. And there's a lot of other things that, they're really looking at it from so many multi-directions at this problem, that it really, and when we may find that that's really what it is, or that it's going to take, better equipment, making sure that you're aware of what you're doing when you're doing things to try to avoid big concussions. Again, the right nutrition, maybe, there's some training protocols or something that help boost, your abilities to avoid concussions, or, if you get headed, there's things that you can do that will help with some different nutrients and stuff that help heal the brain, or things of that nature. So really a hot topic right now, and I know that they're not the only school and the only researchers out there looking at this, but it's really interesting. It's really a important subject to find some answers out for, with the amount of folks that, especially we see in the NFL with CTEs, and trying to help them out. Not only trying to help people avoid them, but also help people out that have had them as well, right? And what can we do to minimize the long-lasting negative effects of that as well? What lifestyle factors elevate or reduce risks of different cancers and cardiovascular disease? And another great question. And again, there's a lot of times that folks that that have somewhat of a control on their diet, they live an active lifestyle and things like that, definitely reduces those risks. But is there, a lot of times too, the question is, okay, well, should I be doing more cardio? Should I be doing more weightlifting? Again, there's that's a good question, especially if you're like, my family's prone to cancer or something like that, so which one works? And there's research on that. Right? There's people that do research on that. Like, okay, is there something in particular that's a little bit more beneficial than something else, right? And so again, there's even though people are doing research and answering some of these questions, sometimes people want a little bit more like, okay, if I'm going to do exercise, what's the most intentional thing to help me with it, right? And so again, there's once you answer a question, there's further investigations that you can do, or more focused in some ways, which is great. What approaches work best for teaching children movement skills? That's another great question. Any of you that have ever been a teacher or a coach, especially the youngest kid, right? You've got, some of those kids that are really good focus. You're sitting there and you're teaching like, man, this child's amazing. Like everything I say, they're just like sponging it up. They get it. And then you got some other kid out there chasing butterflies, another kid just interested in picking boogers, and you're like, oh, well, how do I reach those kids, right? And so, that's always the thing, like how do we implement things that capture, and again, you may not capture all the kids in a certain age group, but what type of teaching techniques could we do that captures their attention, that gets them focused, that can really bring to life, like understanding this particular movement and to the degree which it helps them to be successful in either kind of sport or being able to do an exercise movement correctly, so on and so forth, right? And then how can elderly decrease risks of falls? And again, it's a multifaceted thing. We know that osteoporosis, is a contributing factor. We know that losing balance as you age is a contributing factor. Losing, muscle mass is a contributing factor. There's a lot of things that we have when we're younger, right? So stronger bones, stronger muscles, better sense of balance. What are things, what type of exercises are most beneficial as you age? What nutritional strategies should you implement as you age? Are there certain mental games that help, keep the brain healthy and focused, and some things that you can do as you age that are, safe so that you don't hurt yourself working on your balance, but also are critical in helping you to maintain or to regain a sense of balance that makes you least likely to falls. And again, not all researchers wear white lab coats. In general, in my profession, we don't. I don't really see a lot of folks in the exercise physiology, kinesiology, biomechanics community wear lab coats, except for maybe when they're doing research that entails drawing blood and things like that. But and I've spent some time with the neuroscience group, as I said, over at Nova, and some of them do wear lab coats, some of them don't. I think it kind of depends on their focus in that particular, but there's all kinds of research being done, not just, and again, sometimes it's in a lab, sometimes it's actually in real world setting, right? Because again, there's one thing that, when you control something in a lab, the great part of that is we can get rid of a lot of extraneous variables. One of the problems with that, though, is sometimes it's hard to relate it out to real world events. So here's this, and again, this is not an experiment or lab thing, but this is just kind of something to think about with this, all right? So most of you have probably seen the show Biggest Loser, and I'm not advocating anything for that show. Actually, it's a show I really don't like one bit for many, many, many reasons. But you could almost look at that is a lab experiment because it doesn't work in the real world. And what I mean by that is you take people out of their real life who have trouble controlling the amount of exercise they need to get, who have trouble controlling their dietary intake. And now you put them in a scenario where they, Hollywood puts them up in this nice house. They've got trainers that are with them like pretty much 24/7 that are always working with them on what to exercise, when to exercise, just telling them what to do, when to do it, and all that. And then they've got chefs making them, not only healthy meals, but deliciously healthy meals that most of us cannot cook, right? They'll take something that's like, basically rabbit food and somehow make it taste like, steak with the side of cheeseburger and fries or something. It's like it's this thing. And again, you can see rapid weight loss, which again is not used, another thing I don't advocate for people because it's usually not very healthy and very dangerous. And I think a lot of stuff they do on that show is very dangerous. Again, it makes for good TV because you see dramatic change. But again, to me, it's a lab experiment. And which if you follow people after that, there's very few people that have been able to keep that weight off because, again, once they get back to real life, now they're back with their family who's not eating that way. They're back with their family who's wanting to use their time for, they got to go back to work, so they're working 40, 50, 60 hours, wherever they were before that they had to take a break from. They come home, the kids are wanting to help with homework or something. You know, the wife or the husband wants to spend time with them. So they can't spend like 6 to 7 hours a day, whatever they were doing, exercising. And again, they don't have somebody cooking healthy for them anymore. And so now they're trying to incorporate what they've learned into their real life, and most of them find it unsuccessful. And you will find that most of the folks that have been on that show have either gained all their weight back plus some, or they're gaining their weight back, they're sewing their way up. And so again, you know, that's one of the problems we run into in research is sometimes we'll do stuff in the lab and we'll manipulate things, you know, and there's a place for that. And there's a way that you extrapolate that data and then implement it into, okay, well, how do we practice that? Because again, it's one thing that, you know, we can say, okay, we're really seeing this, you know, and we see that this is actually making an effect. But now if we put it in real life, what does that mean, right? And so sometimes then we have to come up with new experiments. Like how do we do more of the real world scenario, okay? And so again, you know, how you, that's the other thing is how people interpret data, right? So again, a lot of times there's certain experiments that we just can't do on humans because it would, you know, be detrimental to their health. So a lot of times you'll see all these nutritional studies done on mice or rats or things like that, and they basically give them too much of something, right? So, you know, one of the most famous ones is the artificial sweetener aspartame study with mice or rats, and you know, I can't remember which one it is. It's been a while since I've read it, but you know, they're basically feeding them their body weight plus some in aspartame every day. You know, and it ends up causing cancer. And again, you know, you have people that read that and they're like, okay, so artificial sweeteners cause cancer, and it's like no, because again, in a real life scenario, one, the people that are taking it in are not rats or mice, and two, we can't eat our body weight in anything on a daily basis. You know, it doesn't, you know, I mean, even with all the food, you know, like when people are like really gaining weight, they're not eating their body weight. You know, that, so that's one issue. And again, we're not going to eat our body weight in artificial sweetener, you know, and so it's not going to be something that you can really put out in real life. All you can gather from that is if you overload somebody's body possibly with too much artificial sweetener, like their body weight or more, maybe they might get cancer. But the problem is you could never do that. You know, I mean, it's impossible that somebody could eat that much, right? And so again, you know, when we look at real world scenarios, we do observational, you know, like, okay, here's somebody that, you know, they do diet sodas and they put artificial sweeteners in their coffees and things, and they've been doing that for 60 years. And, you know, we're like, all right, how's your health? You know, and then we look at that, and some people might have cancer, some people don't have cancer. And then you're like, okay, well, is artificial sweetener playing into it or is it not? Because some people do and some people don't. And the other thing that we don't know with that is what's all their other lifestyle things that they are doing, right? You know, we can't just say, okay, because this person drinks artificial sweeteners and they have cancer, obviously there's a connection, because then you have to look at other things. You know, are they sedentary? You know, what other foods do they eat? You know, do they, you know, or foods that they eat or don't eat? You know, do they smoke? You know, the type of environment they live in, is it stressful? Is it not stressful? You know, there's so many multifactorials when we look at those type of observational things. You know, when we look at those correlations, even if we see like even a slight trend, you can't say that, you know, just because something correlates, it's causes, because again, we're very diverse in all the many things that we do and don't do, and eat and don't eat, and everything else in our, you know, like how we interpret stress and feel that, and you know, all that factors in. That, you know, again, it's one of those things that it's hard, because we can do things in a lab and see things, we can do things in real life, and a lot of times the stuff in real life is really hard to really make a concrete conclusion either, right? So sometimes it's hard to take the things from the lab and put them out in the real world, and then the things we find in the real world, because nobody's just doing one thing, nobody's just eating one thing, nobody's just like focusing their mind and body on just this one thing. that that's it. It's like, okay, you do this and we see this, right? And the reason I'm saying this, and I'm kind of going off on not trying to go off on a tangent, the reason I'm saying this stuff to you is because you will see people take even research studies, well done research studies, and misinterpret them, misquote them, and try to make it like this is what's going on, right? And again, it's, the research study itself might be leading towards something or saying, like, hey, we're seeing something here, and again, if you usually read them, they'll allude to like, we think this might be why we're seeing this, but, again, we don't know because there's too many other factors involved. But people like to spout it off as truth. You'll see this with the media. The media is notorious for finding a study or finding somebody they term an expert that will present the study on the news. And, it's like, oh my gosh, bananas are horrible for you, or coconut oil is, a weight loss drug or something. It's like, it's nonsense, right? And I picked on those two for two reasons that, recent years, bananas are either bad for you, good for you, bad for you, good for you. Bananas are, to be honest, all food's good for you in the right context, and all food can be bad for you in the wrong context. To an extent, it's, bananas, in my opinion, are a good food. There's a, great source of vitamins and minerals, and, it's a healthy fruit to eat. It does have a decent amount of calories, so again, if you need the energy, great. If you are trying to restrict your energy content, it may not be, on some days it may be a good option. On other days it may put you over the edge. So on another day it might be the wrong option for you at the end of the day or something. So again, it's all on how you use those things. And again, coconut oil. Coconut oil is coconut oil. It's, it's got some things in it that are healthy. It's got lots of fat, particularly saturated. So if you overdo it, again, you can see an increase in body fat percentage. You can, saturated fat, if you get saturated fat, you're prone to having, problems with your blood pressure and things, like cardiovascular things based on getting too much saturated fat, and you're adding that other saturated fat in. I mean, you may see some, you may see an increase in LDL and things like that. And so, yeah, again, it's not that it's a bad food, but it's not that it's like some super healthy food that has some miracle cure in it either. It's just food, right? So you got to understand how to interpret these things and to really take them for what they are. Okay. All right, so historical approaches to solving problems. Common sense. I tell my students this all the time. Common sense is now a superpower, especially with the amount of garbage that's out there, and people get so manipulated into, oh man, no, you got to do this diet. This is the only diet that works. This is the only workout regimen that works. And it's not just in our field, it's in a lot of things. There's just a lot of misinformation that's out there in the world. And so people's basic understanding of how the world works, I feel like it's just getting worse. I don't know. That's just my thing. Common knowledge is not common. And again, something might be a common knowledge, doesn't mean that it's right either. There's, there might be something that, I know what that is, but I also know that it's wrong. It's common knowledge that there are people that are out there that believe the world is still flat for whatever reason. And it was a common knowledge way back when, a lot of people, like most people, believe that the earth was flat. It doesn't make it right. It's just, okay, people just believe that, or people think that they know something, whatever that is, there's I've heard, the dinosaur extinction theories. Most of us grew up hearing about the meteor theory, and I've read some other historical context, science type theories that also make sense, that have nothing to do with it. And again, it's not my area of expertise, so I can't tell you one way or the other on that. But maybe the meteor theory was wrong. you know, but again, it's something that's taught to us in school, so it's something that, you know, most of us kind of believe that is what it is. But there are some scientists out there that really believe strongly that no, that's not it, you know, and they do their own research and all that, and maybe they've come up with a better theory. And again, the problem with that is too is it's not something that we can probably prove without a doubt. You know, it's always going to be theory. You know, it's not something that we can necessarily transfer from theory to law. And that's the other thing too with a lot of the science stuff that we do. You know, a lot of times we can only get so far. You know, we can only find maybe like 60 to 70% of the truth or 80% of the truth, but we can't quite go 100%, right? And so that's why when you look at science and you look at when we're doing research, you know, we can only take it so far, and there's only, you know, we have very few laws. You know, we've got the law of gravity, we've got the different laws of thermodynamics, you know, and outside of those, I mean, we really don't have a lot of laws, that things that we can prove without a doubt, time and time again, hold absolute truth, right? All right, so deductive reasoning using syllogisms. And you're going to see these. These are kind of some ridiculous examples, but it does show you like how people make, you know, like they'll take what you read and they interpret it wrong, you know. So the premise is all knee injuries are painful. Premise 2, Trevor has an injured knee, therefore Trevor's knee is painful, right? You know, and again, you know, if premise 1 holds true, then yeah, that would be, again, that's, you know, premise 1 is probably not always true. You know, some people can have an injury, but they don't know the injury exists until the injury gets exacerbated, right? So he may already have an injury, he's not feeling any pain. He may have some movement issues, you know, maybe some clicking or something that healed, but it might not be pain, right? So again, that's just based on the fact that premise 1 is 100% true. Premise 1, all students are clever. Again, another faulty premise. You know, not all students are clever. Not all people are clever, right? Buster is a student, therefore Buster must be clever, right? So again, if you have a false premise in any of them, you know, you're making faulty conclusions. But again, they're just trying to show you deductive, right? Inductive reasoning. His general conclusion is drawn from specific observation, right? So every bird that I have seen has wings. So, you know, I'm sitting out there looking out of my garage right now. Well, yeah, every bird that I'm going to see out here in South Florida that's in my neighborhood is going to have wings, because that's just how they get here. We don't have any birds without wings. You know, and I don't know if there are birds without wings. You know, I don't know what you call, you know, the things that penguins have, whether they're wings or flippers or whatever. I'm not a zoologist, so you know, maybe those aren't considered wings. I have no idea. You know, they've got those little flaps. Anyways, every bird that I see has wings, therefore all birds have wings. You know, again, maybe that's true, maybe that's not. I don't know. I haven't seen every bird in the world, so I'm not sure. Another faulty premise: my dog is cute, therefore all dogs are cute. I think my dog's cute, but I've seen some dogs that are kind of some ugly dogs, right? So, you know, they have contests for, you know, the ugliest dog in the world, the ugliest dog in America, and things like that. So, again, kind of a faulty premise there, right? Again, it's, you know, you're taking something specific and drawing it out. And again, we see people do this, and a lot of times when we do that, there is always some fallacy in there. Okay. So for example, if I did an experiment on young African American females that do a certain exercise routine, and I see that with them in particular, this exercise routine helps them to build, you know, like on average 20% more muscle than doing another exercise routine. And then somehow I tried to extrapolate that out and say, okay, well, this works for all women. Well, no, because everybody that happened to be in my study was African American. Maybe there's something in their ethnicity or something, you know, that did that, right? And again, I'm bringing that up because of a lot of times that you find a lot of studies, and again, it's a lot easier to get IRB approval on is young, healthy white males seem to be an easy group to study. And again, we've had studies for years and years and years. And sometimes those studies, when we've been able to do them again, and we've been able to cross multicultural bounds, and we've been able to cross, gender, the gender bounds as well, as including males and females in the studies. Sometimes we do see it hold true, but sometimes when you do that, across those things, sometimes we get some mixed stuff, right? And so sometimes they're, you can't just draw out because, you did it on a really small population of, like one ethnic group or one gender group, that holds true for everyone, okay? And so you've got to be really careful. So if you did a study on, young adult African American females or young adult, Caucasian males or Asian males or, Hispanic males or whatever else, whatever that group is, that's really how you have to conclude it is, we did this study on young Latin females in South Florida. They did all this exercise, we saw these results. Therefore, this seems to hold true, or this, we expect this pattern to hold true to some extent in young Latin females. And again, in South Florida, because again, the other thing you got to realize is the things, their lifestyle, the culture here and everything else might be different than if you took young Latin females down in like Colombia or Argentina or so on and so forth. Maybe, some of the factors is the environment here or the food or, maybe the lifestyle, or there's some things that you weren't controlling, right? And so that's the thing you got to understand is, if you're going to look at a specific group, you can only conclude your stuff after that specific group. And again, we see a lot of these things where, like if you really look at the experiment, it really was on a specific group. And again, you'll see it in the media. You'll see, your buddies quoting this thing, telling you like, this is why you need to eat this diet, or this way, because it was done, and you're like, look, one, I'm not in the 20s group anymore. I'm a white male. This does not apply to me. I get maybe it does work. Like maybe if I did do that, maybe I would see some results. But I'm not one of, I'm not in that particular study group. Therefore, you can't really conclude that would work for me. And you can't conclude that would work for like, my grandma or anything like that. Or you can't even conclude that, they're all young 20s, that would work for their parents. Right? I mean, that's the truth of the matter. All right. So inductive reasoning versus science. All right. So this kind of gives you this idea of how people look at things. All right. So it's just an illustration, but so you have an artist, an accountant, scientist. They're traveling through New Zealand on a train, and they see a black sheep through the window of the train. So the artist will say, look, New Zealand sheep are black, okay? So that's the observation that he makes. The accountant says, well, at least some New Zealand sheep are black, right? So he's getting a little bit more, like he's a little more sciencey in his thought process because he's like, look, this is all we see, so, we haven't seen any white sheep or any brown sheep or any other color sheep, but, at least the ones we've seen are black, therefore we know that there are some doing that, right? And then the scientist says, no, all we know is that there's at least one sheep in New Zealand, right? Because they only saw one sheep, and at least one side of that sheep is black. Because again, when they're going by the train, say that the train's going east-west, and the sheep is facing east or west, and it didn't move. They didn't see the other side of it. They know at least that one side, right? So, I mean, that's really, as a scientist, that's, you only report on exactly what you see, or you're supposed to report on exactly what you see. Now, I've done some peer review for journals and stuff, And, and that's one of the things that I kind of, like one of the things when I look at the conclusions, I always tell them like, okay, this is what you observed, so this is all you can say. Because it really is. I mean, it's, I know we want to take what we've done and make it into this big, huge thing. Like, okay, I've done this research, and this is going to change the world. So let's generalize it out. And there's that desire to do that, but that's not how you report it. And again, maybe what you've come up with would revolutionize the world. I don't know, but you got to generalize exactly how it is. If you took young Latin males between 20 and 30 and did a experiment, with them using, like a certain lifting protocol, with a certain supplement, and you had, like multiple groups in there, and the group that was doing the supplement with that lifting protocol saw these huge results, really all we can say is, this particular group saw these huge results. And again, if we took this out and we expanded the number of, we expanded the number of young Latin males and did it again with another group and stuff, we can, maybe after a few experiments or after we've expanded the groups and done those things, we can say, okay, we definitely see this in young Latin males. We took them in Miami, we went out to California, did the same thing. We actually went down to South America and did some things and all this, and we're seeing the same results. Then yes, you can start to paint a picture. But again, we can't extrapolate it any further. We can't say that we'll see that one in females, and we can't say that, our young Latin females, because we've been doing an experiment on them. And again, we can't say that we could see that in any other culture as well, And again, we can't extrapolate it out to other age groups. So we can't say those in their 30s and between 30s and 40s or 40s and 50s, in the different cultures and genders would see anything else either, right? And so, whatever you did that on, you have to say it that way. Okay? So does that make, hopefully that makes sense to those of you that are watching this, that, that's really how things should be reported out. And I've read scientific journals where they let the authors get away with making, I would say, extravagant conclusions. And good. And again, some of those things just slip through, and again, during, some of the time it's in some good journals. And again, not all the journals that are out there are peer reviewed. So you got to be really careful with that too. Peer review process, usually somebody will catch it. But again, one of the things you got to understand too is who's peer reviewing certain journals. So like, I'm not picking on the AMA, the American Medical. So if you read JAMA, sometimes when they send a peer review out, especially when it comes to something like fitness and or nutrition, there's no guarantee that the peer reviewers in that, because again, a lot of times they may be like indie doctors, like maybe they'll send off a nutrition thing and the folks are just, I don't want to say just indie doctors, but they're indie doctors, right? And maybe they don't get anybody in there that's got like an RBE or anybody in like my field that's got a mix of exercise and nutrition backgrounds and things like that. Because again, nothing against indie doctors, they're amazing and great at what they do. But a lot of times when you go through med school and even pre-med, before they get into med school, a lot of them don't have to have nutrition in class. A lot of them don't have to have any type of exercise sciences in class, but they may be peer reviewing on something that, again, they've got an idea about it because, in their realm, they get obese patients and things like that, and that exercise and diet would help those patients, but they really don't have any scholastic background in that, but they may be the ones peer reviewing something. Okay, and so again, just something, it's not really truly peers that are reviewing things all the time, if that makes sense. And again, I'm not picking on them, I'm just saying from my field, it'd be the same thing. If I was reviewing something on some type of colon cancer protocol, in some experimental drug or some type of procedure, and somehow it got into a journal that I was peer reviewing for, I really would not be a good peer reviewer for that, because that's not something that I'm an expert in. But there's a good chance that I might be asked to peer review it. Now, me as a reviewer should deny wanting to review that, but that's not always the case, right? And so again, those things do happen, right? So again, I'm not picking on any of these. You guys are, you guys know your stuff. You're smart. And again, I'm showing that I shouldn't be in your realm peer reviewing anything that you guys would actually be experts on others. All right. I'm not trying to start any fights. So again, what is the purpose of research? Easy, right? We want to answer questions, solve a problem. And again, you saw the weaknesses in deductive and inductive reasoning, especially in isolation. Again, it's really hard to do those things, even when things are not exactly in isolation either, because a lot of times we try to people try to overstep the effectiveness of what they've studied and looked at. Okay? Again, trying to do an experiment, one of the things you want to do is you've got to do your lit search, or what most people think researching is. So I want to answer a problem. Before I decide to set up an experiment to answer that problem, I got to go look and see, is there something out there already that answers that or has attempted to answer that? And again, this is important for several reasons. One, if somebody already answered it, what's the point in you doing that? Now, again, you may have a different take on it, or maybe you want to take it a step further, which is fine. But the other thing too is it helps you to avoid any mistakes. So say somebody did something they weren't able to answer the question, right? And so if you read through how they did their methods and everything, you might see, okay, they didn't control for this, so that's why even though they saw these effects, they can't really say, yeah, we need to control for these things. We need to make sure that these are not confounding variables. All right, so again, you got to do your lit review or your lit search before you undertake a scientific experiment on your own. Okay? Again, scientific method, you want to state it in terms of independent variable. So again, if you don't know what are independent variable, what the research wants to study. Right? So this is one that so if I was doing a study on a supplement, and how it affects somebody, the supplement is going to be the independent variable in this. The dependent variable is what the research will measure to provide evidence. So if I'm giving the supplement to a person, I'm measuring like their blood or something like that, that's going to be the dependent variable. So whatever the changes in their blood content, so on and so forth, would be the dependent variable. Or maybe I'm measuring the body fat percentage change or something along those lines. Here's your dependent variable. So that's what I'm measuring to see whether or not the independent variable works. Right? So again, good example down there is effects of sleep deprivation on reaction time. So the independent variable would be sleep deprivation. Your dependent variable is going to be reaction time, right? So we'll measure reaction time. Again, this book's got a lot of cheesy, as we go through this, they've got some cheesy illustrations, but I left some of them in here for you. Some of them I took out because, they had a lot. Next step is you want to form your hypothesis, right? So, and again, a lot of people think a hypothesis is, like, man, it's really like on par with like, if somebody's got a hypothesis, man, they must have done so much stuff. I mean, it's an educated guess. Now, again, it's based on all the, lit review that you've done, based on, your understanding in certain subjects, everything you've been taught in class, your experience working in the field. I mean, all that plays into it, but you're making an educated guess, and again, a lot of times, like, you may be 100% like, okay, this is going to happen. And you've had enough experience and education, you've done enough research out there that you're little, like, again, maybe something's been researched like 1,000 times, but you're doing a slightly different take on it. And so you're like, okay, this question hasn't quite really been answered, but, based on everything else, we could actually, like, conclude this probably would happen, but let's just make sure it does. You know, so yeah, you're probably right. You do it, you go through it, you're probably right. But again, it's still an educated guess because there's that possibility it might not, right? And again, we do see that happen in research. You know, people are so sure that something's going to happen, and then it doesn't. So again, an example would be, you know, they use this hypothesize that reaction time will be significantly longer following 24 hours of sleep deprivation, right? So that's how they're going to state it. So they wanted to answer the question, does sleep deprivation have any effect? Their thought process is it's going to have a significant effect on, you know, the reaction time in a negative way, right? You're not going to have as fast of a reaction time, right? So again, now you got to plan the methodology for the study. So we got to figure out the design. All right, so how many groups? You know, so we'll, you know, we've got to have either, you know, you could either, for that one, you could do the same group. So you could have, you know, they do where several nights they get good amount of sleep. You know, they come in, we do some trials, we set some baseline reaction times. Then we could put them through like a day or a couple days where they do sleep deprivation. And so the days that they have sleep deprivation, they come and do the trials. Things take them longer. And then again, if we just want to check that, you know, okay, it wasn't just some freak thing, we could then allow them, you know, like they start getting good rest again, we do the same thing again. And if we see their reaction times get faster again, maybe we want to double check again and go put them through sleep deprivation. You know, I mean, you could do it with the same group multiple times, doing the different things. You know, that's one design. Another one would be to have one group that gets good sleep, another group that doesn't get good sleep, and test them against each other, right? So each group does one test, or each does one battery of tests. You know, those are multiple designs that you could do, all right? Or you could have the groups flip-flop, right? So, you know, the first week, this group sleeps, this group doesn't. They do the test, and then on the second week, you flip-flop. The group that had good sleep is kept up all night. The group that didn't have good sleep now gets to sleep and do those tests, right? So you do, you know, the groups could cross from, you know, the sleep deprived group to the full night sleep group, and so on and so forth, right? Criteria to be used for selection of the study of the participants. So again, you know, you want to make sure that there's nothing that might confound the reaction time. So again, somebody that maybe has, you know, like poor vision, you know, that could be a confounding variable. You know, they don't catch things very quickly because they don't see very well. You may have somebody that has some, you know, CNS problem with their nerves or something. So when they're doing things, you know, that may actually be a confounding variable. So again, you want to make sure that they have a healthy nervous system. They would have a normal reaction. You don't want to have, you know, again, if you're looking for folks that are just kind of like general population, you don't want to accidentally get some like highly tuned like athlete or esports person that's got like crazy reaction time in one of the groups, or you don't want to have like a group full of like, you know, like you don't want to have all these esports guys that have like crazy like finger reaction time, especially if you're doing like hand reaction time tests, and they're all in one group versus a group of folks that don't really do any of that stuff, right? And so again, you want to make sure that your groups are even across the board, right? And again, number of participants. You know, I could have one person get sleep deprived, another person get good sleep, and that's not going to tell us anything. I mean, what if that one guy just happens to have slow reaction times anyways, right? So again, you want to make sure you have enough participants that you drown out any people that are just naturally fast or naturally slow or something like that, right? And again, you want to have a protocol. So, you know, this is what we expect out of you. You know, if you're going to be on the sleep deprived group and you're staying up all night, right? Don't come in that day if for some reason like you tried to stay up at the 9 o'clock hit and you fell asleep and you ended up getting like 8 hours, 9 hours of sleep before you tune in. Right. So again, there's protocols and you're going to hold them to adhering to those protocols. Right. Apparatus. What equipment's going to be used? So again, for a reaction time test, you may use like an iPad with some type of program on it. Maybe you'll use something that's got buttons all over it. You know, computer pad or like a keyboard or something along those lines. Instruments are going to be surveys. Again, you can administer surveys with paper, you can administer surveys over a computer or an iPad, so on and so forth. So again, the apparatus is equipment, instruments are surveys. And I know that one always gets confusing. I remember that used to confuse me a little bit when I was when I was first taking research methods classes when I was younger, just because, you know, for some reason, instruments, we think of instruments, we think of things, you know, you think of, okay, you know, like chemistry instruments, lab instruments, you know, I mean, but the instruments are actually like surveys and apparatuses, which again, an apparatus, when you think of apparatus, you do think of equipment. So, I mean, that one makes sense, but I know my students a lot of times when they go over this, you know, they're like, instrument seems like a weird name for that one. I agree. You know, I think maybe they could use something else, but that's just how it is. I didn't invent research methods. I didn't come up with the terminology, but that's what it is, right? And then statistical tests that will be used to analyze the data. So are we comparing groups? Are we looking at, you know, if one group does something, do we want to see something else go up, or if they're, you know, as this goes up, this goes down? Are we looking for like a correlation? Or are we looking at the differences between groups, right? And so again, there's different studies that you can do for differences. There's a lot of different studies for differences, and then again looking at correlational studies. You know, as one thing goes up, something else goes up, or you know, you get a inverted, you know, you get an inverted graph where if something goes up, something goes down. You know, and so it depends on what you're looking for, right? Plan the methodology for the study, including considerations of internal validity, which is the extent to which any changes measured in the dependent variables can be directly attributed to manipulation of the independent variable. Again, you know, some of the things you got to worry about is like if you have a group doing the same test, like say they come in like 3 times a week for several weeks, and you have them doing the same tests over and over again, well, there might be a learning curve with that, right? So they may be increasing their ability to do those tests, and they're getting faster, and getting better at it. And it may not be because of you're giving them a supplement, or because, you know, you're like, you know, giving them some type of drug or whatever else. It may just be the fact that they're learning how to do it. Okay, so they're just doing better at it, right? They're figuring something out. You know, so again, you want to make sure that you're controlling for that. So, you know, if you're doing some type of like memory test or something else, you don't want it to be the exact same memory test. Now it can be similar, but, you know, if it's something where, like, you know, say it's going to go red, blue, green, green, blue, red, blue, green, blue, red, you know, and that's what they did the first time. You don't want them to do red, blue, green, blue, red. You know, the second time you may want to have like purple, black, yellow on the second, you know, something like that where it's like a chain, you know, like it's a similar test, but, you know, and you're looking for a pattern, but you're changing the colors, you're changing the pattern, those type of things. Okay. External validity is where the extent to which the results of the study can be generalized to the population represented. So this is what I was talking about earlier with, you know, whoever you're doing an experiment on, you know, they're based on their age, their gender, their ethnicity or race, and those type of things. You know, like if it's a really tight group of, like, you know, these are all, you know, like these are all, you know, say they're folks that have Indian descent, you know, from India, that live in the U.S., you know, and they, you know, these are like second, third generation, so they've never lived in India or something like that. Men and women in their 20s to 30s, we do an experiment on them. We can't generalize it out to anybody outside of, you know, like the young Indian men and women that are from the U.S. We can't even generalize that we would see that if we went over to India and got the same age group, because again, the cultural difference between them living here and living there would be different, right? You know, we can't generalize it, you know, like say they're all from the same city, you know, so say they're all from, you know, Fort Lauderdale, where I'm at. You know, we can't say, okay, well, we're going to see this in every city in America. No, because everybody I got was from Fort Lauderdale. So really, we can say that this particular um, race and ethnic group that lives in Fort Lauderdale in this age range, when we did this study, we saw this. Okay, we can't generalize it out too much. Now, again, if we did this study in multiple cities throughout the U.S. with the same groups, then we could, and we saw the same thing every time we, you know, like the more cities we involved, you know, and so we really hit all segmented areas across the United States, then yeah, you could generalize it to 20s to 30 Indian men and women, you know, respond, you know, we see like, we see this response and say it's an overwhelming response, and it's like, yeah, you know, but at that point, we still can't say that, you know, anybody over in India would actually see the same thing until we could take that study and actually perform that over there, right? And then at that point, you could say, okay, in this particular race, ethnicity, age group, we see these things happen. Now, does that happen in the group that's 30 to 40? No, we don't know. So guess what? We got to do the experiment with that group next if we want to see if there's any effect, right? And so you kind of start all over with that. So you can only generalize it out to what you did. So again, that's why it's important, if you want this to be a generalized study to all men and women in a certain, either a certain age group or age range, you've got to have a good mix of folks. So, you know, you want African American, white, men, women, you know, Latin, Hispanic, Asian, you know, maybe American, you know, Native American, you know, you want a good mix of all of that. You want a good mix, a good balanced number, hopefully, you know, like it may not be 50-50 of men and women, but you want, you know, like at least like 40-60 or something like, you know, 30, you know, maybe 30-70, even, you know, if you got large enough numbers, you know, like you got thousands of participants in something like that, you know, it can help to generalize it out a bit more. So again, the more people you have, the greater diversity you have in the population, so on and so forth, makes it more generalizable out to everybody. Okay? And that's the important thing to understand. All right. Collecting data. Reported observations, plural again, you know, you're going to have many observations that you're going to collect or data that you're going to collect. You know, again, you can't just collect like one piece of data from one person and then make an experiment out of it, right? You want to be objective, use the same procedures every time. So again, this is another thing. So say you want to see if a certain supplement works, right? And so you've got your placebo group and you've got your supplement group, you know, and I'm doing workouts with them. I don't want to be over here with the you know, so say I really feel that this supplement's going to work, you know, it's on my belief in or, you know, whatever else. So this group over here, when they're exercising, I'm pushing, I'm like, hey, let's go. You guys are doing a great job. Yeah, push. Yeah, now get one more, you know, and I'm really pushing them. And I've got the placebo group over here. I'm like, hey, good job, guys. You getting tired? Okay, yeah, no worries. You know, if you want to quit, you can. You've got to make sure that you are giving them the same effort on both. One of the ways that you can control for that is, you know, like if I'm the one that knows who's in every group, I should not be the one coaching them, right? So if you're going to have like a fitness coach, guess what? The fitness coach or fitness coaches are not allowed to know, do they have the placebo or do they have the group that has a supplement, right? So it, you know, they're blind to it. Okay, so again, we'll get to blind and double blind. That's actually a double blind study because the participants are blind to it, so they don't know what they're taking, and then the researchers that are actually implementing the actual experiment protocols would be blind as well. So that's what they call a double blind. Okay. But we'll get to that later. Anyways, you want to make sure that you're using the same procedures. Same thing too. Like, so say there's me and 4 other people. Then when people come in, you know, so say I'm there on Monday, somebody else is there on Tuesday, somebody's there on Wednesday, somebody's on Thursday, and we're doing a collection of them doing things, you know, whether it's doing like cheek swabs, doing body fat percentage protocol, so on and so forth. you want to have a script so that, like, if somebody came in on Monday or Tuesday, even though you got two different researchers, they should hear the exact same thing. Okay, here's your procedures. The first thing you're going to do is take off your shoes and go over, and we're going to get your height, right? So that if they came in on Monday, that's what they'll hear. Tuesday, the first thing they'll hear is, the first thing you're going to do is take off your shoes and go over and get your height measure. Right? You're going to have this procedure doing the same thing, right? And then after that, we're going to we're going to get you on the bioelectrical impedance, and we're going to get your body fat percentage. You know, you come in on the other day, it's going to be the same thing. Wednesday, it should be the same thing. So everybody should be following a script and saying and doing the exact same thing as everybody else, so that there's no missteps in gathering the information and the data. Okay? So you're given the exact same instructions. So one thing is all the researchers should be following the exact same instructions, and all the participants should be receiving the exact same instructions and following the exact same instructions as well. Okay. Again, this just shows you a guy looking at a statistic of a statistic of a statistic. So again, how do we analyze data with statistical tools? Okay, so you know, we got to interpret and discuss the results, right? So do the results support the research hypothesis? That, you know, that's always kind of the big question. And really it does, you know, so here's the thing is, you know, as a researcher, you usually, you know, you got, and we'll talk about this, like you either have, you know, we'll talk about what null hypothesis is and all that here in a little bit. You either think, okay, if somebody takes something, we're going to see a result. Or you have if somebody takes something, we're not going to see a result. Or if somebody takes something, we're going to see the opposite of what people expect. Now, again, you know, sometimes some of these can fall into multiple categories where the null and the negative can be, you know, like it's either, we're not, you know, the whole goal is we don't want to see anything positive, right? So whether we see nothing or we see an actual adverse effect, that can be, you know, categorized into something. Unless your hypothesis is to see the negative, then and you expect to see something adverse, well, then you may have the null and the positive actually kind of in the same category, or you may be, you know, like really teasing things out and looking at all three of those. But usually what it comes down to is you either have a hypothesis or a null hypothesis. So you expect to see something or you expect to see nothing, right? And the expect to see nothing is what we call a null. So you just expect there's not going to be anything, right? So again, my theory on most supplements when it comes to exercise, now this is barring creatine, caffeine, you know, and again, how you look at some of these, whether they're supplements or, you know, they're ergogenic aids or just, you know, but when it comes to like creatine, caffeine, protein, you know, like those have been studied a lot, and we've seen a lot of positive things with those. So let's take those out. But if I walked into GNC tomorrow and just pulled a bunch of other stuff off the shelves, my guess is with most of those, especially in trained individuals, I honestly don't see anything happening. I really don't. You know, there's just been, you know, the research that's done on most of the supplements, you get what's called a null hypothesis. So, you know, my thing is all right, we're going to see null hypothesis, which means if I have a group taking the supplement and a group taking a placebo, I figure we're going to see the same results. You know, that supplement's not going to make any difference. You know, the only way I could see the supplement making a difference is if I told the one group they're on a supplement and told the one group they're on a placebo. And so the group that's on the supplement, and I told them, I said, yeah, this stuff is really gonna make you jacked. You know, it's gonna make you feel like strong, and, you know, so they're already like hyped, like when they're taking in the pill, they feel like it's gonna hit their bloodstream, like, you know, like cocaine or something. They're like, you know, so I get them all jazzed up about it. And that's really more of a psychological thing, you know. So when they're in there, they're like, whoa, yeah, you know, just pumped up, going for it. Versus the other group, I'm like, man, y'all aren't on nothing. Just, you know, go with it. Right. And again, that comes down, you know, that's not an ethical study to do. You know, unless you're looking at unless you're doing a psychological study, then that's a whole different thing. You know, and again, if you're doing a psychological study, you use placebo in both groups. And you tell one group they're getting something, tell them the other group they're getting the placebo, and then you'd see what happens, right? So that would be looking at the placebo effect, right? But again, you know, I just don't, you know, for most supplements, I feel like I'm going to see a null hypothesis, right? So again, my results I would expect are going to support that. Now, here's the thing: what if somebody came out with some new supplement that, you know, I don't really know much about? And I'm like, okay, well, we'll try this. I don't even know what this is, right? And I get it approved through the IRB, even though I have no idea what it is. So some miracle I get to give people this thing that I don't know anything about, right? I'd have to study some of it before. Anyways, I don't think something's going to happen, but all of a sudden my group that's on it sees incredible results, like either loss of body fat or they just get incredibly jacked, versus the other group, you know, maybe they saw some improvements just because, you know, they're exercising or whatever, but, you know, it's a vast difference. You know, like we're seeing one group's up here and one group's here, maybe both groups went up. That's still a difference, right? And say statistically, it's a difference, right? Well, I was wrong. You know, the results did not support my research hypothesis, you know, but again, I still want to report that, you know, just because, and it's important, you know, because, you know, I may have found something. I didn't expect to find it. You know, I'm a little like peeved because I'm like, man, I thought I knew it all, right? And that's another thing is, you know, a lot of times researchers find things that they don't want to find, but they still have the responsibility to get it published and get it out there because it adds to the information out there. And again, what it does is it warrants people now looking at that particular supplement and being like, all right, we got to do a few more experiments and see if this really works. And then say there's more experiments and it's like, hey, we're seeing good things, right? So then, you know, now there's something new that's been discovered and we expect to see something. And again, it doesn't, you know, based on all the studies I've seen with all other supplements, it didn't, you know, I'm just like, all right, this is probably just another one of these supplements that gets put on the shelves at these health food places that does absolutely nothing. You know, so all the research led me to making my educated guess, but my educated guess was wrong. And the thing is that's okay. I know a lot of times scientists, you know, like they don't like their egos being messed with. Again, if you're going to get into science, I think it's a good idea to check your ego at the door. That's not what, you know, I mean, it's not a good thing to carry with you. You know, one of the things that I've seen some graphs, and they've been put out by some folks that I really respect too in the sport and fitness and exercise science community, is, you know, there's this, they show these graphs of, you know, like it's kind of a graph of like students and experts in our field. You know, before they get in the field, you know, they really don't know anything. As they start going through classes and stuff, you go through this point where you think you're an expert, you know everything. And then the more education you get, you realize you absolutely know nothing. You know, so it shows this like curve of like expertise where you go up here and you think, you know, you get just enough information to be dangerous. That's what I always tell people. I'm like, you know, there's so many people out there that when it comes to like fitness and nutrition, they have just enough information that they're dangerous. Like they know enough that they get some of the basics, but they don't know anything, but they think they're experts, right? And so they spat off a lot of nonsense and garbage. But then if they actually really go get a formal education, so they get through, and again, you know, they'll get through their bachelor's. Sometimes people, you know, like as they're going through their bachelor's, they'll dip off. Some folks, they get to the end of their bachelor's, which means I feel like people, if they feel like they're an expert when they finish their bachelor's, your professors really failed you. You should come out of there feeling like you have so much more to learn. You know, because that's what usually happens once you get done with your master's. You get through your master's and you're like, you know, you're going through the master's program and you're like, oh, crud, man, I don't know anything, right? There's so much I understand, but there's so much I don't. And that's really what, you know, by the time you get through your education, I mean, when I got through my PhD, that's really what it is. I mean, it's like, and I got through my master's, I'm like, man, there's so much I don't know. There's certain things I think I know, but I'm like, you know, and again, it's one of those things when people ask me questions, I still don't have a lot of confidence in my answers. You know, a lot of times I'm like, all right, man, you learned that 100 times. Are you sure that's right when you're saying it to somebody? You know, because again, it's like, you know, It is, and that's really that you should approach stuff with humility. And a lot of times, you know, when you answer a lot of the same questions over and over, that you know, and again, because I'm like, let me check that and double check that and triple check that. There's certain things now I don't have to check, you know, because I've looked them over so many times. That there's some things that maybe somebody hasn't asked me that question in like a few years. And again, my first thing is like, I think it, you know, like I always give this disclaimer. I remember learning it this way, and I remember the last time I was looking this up, I thought it was this way. And I'm giving you an answer now, but let me research it again. Or, you know, again, research isn't the right word. Let me look that up. You know, let me go back to the literature and look that up and double check, and then let me give you an answer tomorrow, right? And that's really how we should answer things. Because, and you know, as a scientist, you don't know, you know, and again, you're making your best, your best efforts and best guesses with, you know, the information you got. But again, don't let your ego override what you're doing. Okay. And again, once you look at the results, you know, how do they compare to other studies? Again, if your result's an outlier, you know, like, okay, all the other studies that are similar are showing that, you know, this thing's going in this direction, but yours showing something going in this direction, you got to go back through. My first feeling is I did something wrong. I missed some boat somewhere because it should have been going in the same direction as everything else. So then you want to check through, was there any mistakes made in the way we did this? Was there anything that we didn't think of, any outliers? Was there anything that we didn't account for, control for? What happened? Now, again, if you go through, and again, if you know, send that off to some of your other expert friends, you know, that, hey, take a look at this, man. What did I miss? You know, and if everybody's saying like, no, you did that right, maybe you did find something different. You know, I mean, again, double and triple. Don't just let your ego take over and be like, I've got the, you know, I found the, you know, the cure for this, or I found what, you know, the holy grail or whatever of supplements. You know, don't go there yet. You know, check it out first, and then again, is there practical applications or implications for clinical practice? Again, I usually in class, a lot of times we'll start looking at some of the, and you guys can do this, you know, maybe we'll make this a discussion for the class, but I'll have you guys, and again, I'll let you Google this because this is always kind of fun. You'll find it on Google. Is look for grants, some of the funniest things that have ever been people have got grants for to study or research. I mean, there's some of things out there you're like, you know, government grants for things, and you're like, all right, that's really weird and interesting. Sometimes you know, but does it have any real world application? And there's a lot of things that, you know, like the government gives these, like, you know, like stuff like hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of thousands of dollars grant, and these people do these studies, and you're like, what does that have to do with anything in the real world? Can we even use it? You know, like sometimes, you know, like there's some stuff and you're like, okay, maybe we can use it. And there's some other stuff you're like, absolutely nothing. You know, it's just like, man, what a waste of money. Why did we even study that? You know, just so we know it. You know, and sometimes that's what it is. People do studies just so they know something. And it's like, okay, so we spend $100,000, but this will absolutely do nothing for us in any way benefit, you know, anybody's lives or their worlds or anything in any particular manner, but we spend a lot of money to do it, right? Again, conclusions. So what's the take-home message, right? You know, again, the take-home message needs to be specific to what you did, right? Don't extrapolate it out to something that it can't hold, okay? So again, you know, take-home messages. I did an experiment on this group of people in this age range, just gender and all these other things. Therefore, the take-home message is these folks that live in this area that are this age, this gender, this ethnicity, this race, you know, when they do this type of exercise or they take this supplement, they will see these results. You know, so be succinct. Okay, don't generalize things out beyond the scope of what you did. And again, I'm warning you because one, it's wrong, and two, hopefully someone will call you out on it. But yes, you guys are going to, as we go through this class, and I challenge you to go do some lit reviews and things on different subjects, you will find many things that have passed through either peer-reviewed journals or journals that people try to pass off as scientific journals that are really more pseudoscience, that that people use in their research as in the lit reviews too. That the proof, like, oh yeah, this is why I think I'm going to see all this, and you're like, okay, that's not a very good study, one, and two, they overgeneralized it. So yeah, don't be that person, right? I'm trying to teach you guys to be good researchers. So when you get out and you do your research, don't overgeneralize. Just say what you think. It is. It's like you say what you found. I mean, it's like this. If you're walking down the street and you find a $5 bill on the street, don't say you found a bunch of $5 bills. Don't say you found don't undersell it. Like, yeah, I only found a $1 bill, and don't oversell it. Yeah, I found a bunch of Benjamins, right? I mean, just say what you found. Like we found a $5 bill. That's it. I mean, it is what it is. And again, let that be what it needs to be for the science community, right? And that's the thing that people don't understand. They feel like, I think sometimes researchers feel like they've got to overgeneralize something so that it gets some headway or makes this, like some huge difference. But again, sometimes your study might have had some major limitations, either based on the funding that you had or didn't have, the subjects that you could or couldn't get, and all that. But it may be the basis for somebody else who may have different resources, not better resources, but different. They might do the same study with a different group, or they might take that study a little bit further, and now it adds to the body of that particular research. And again, yours is now the thing that's being so in people's lit reviews, it's you, it's your group of researchers, this group of researchers, this group, and maybe you do some more research, in that particular field. You've got all these different researchers all working together doing something that are building a community of research or a body of research that is finding something that is important, right? So even though yours might have only been on this small group of people, the next time you may, because more and more is being done and you're one of the first people on it, people are now asking you hey, you did this. Will you work with me? I've got 1,000 folks out in California or on the island of Hawaii or whatever else, or in Australia or something. We're doing something similar. Can you collaborate with me on this, right? And so now you're becoming a so-called expert in that particular field, a field within a field, and so you're now lending your expertise in, and you're collaborating on all these different things, and it's adding to that body of research that is important. Okay, so don't overdo it just because you want it to be important. Okay. So here's the cyclical nature of scientific method. So again, you make observations, you read some research literature, and then you make more observations, and you kind of get some things, and then you formulate a research question. You come up with your hypothesis based on all the things that you've read, you've seen, your education, your observations, so on and so forth. From there, you create your hypothesis of what you expect to see when you do your research. You plan, conduct your study, you analyze the data of that, and then from there you go into things. Either results suggest a follow-up study, so then you formulate a new question and work your way back down, or it has a new research interest emerges out of that, right? So again, you see something and you're like, okay, this was cool, but not all that cool. But there was something that came up in that now sparks, you get the light bulb, aha, right? And so then now you go back up, and now you're looking at new literature and things, and coming up with some new ideas and making some new observations, right? And you work your way back down. Okay. Again, pilot testing. Again, a lot of times it's a good idea to do some pilot testing, especially if you're doing something where it's really say you're really out there on something in the regards of man, nothing's really been done on this before, or anything even similar. So, you know, what little things you can find that somewhat relate to what you're doing, you're like, man, this doesn't help, right? So, you know, you can conduct a pilot test to see if, like, okay, is this going to even start going in any type of direction, right? And so what that can help you do is by doing a pilot test, before you go through and you get all this grant funding or all these things and you do all these other things that basically leads to, it's like, okay, you really found nothing in any direction, you might see that. And again, the pilot test may show you some things. Either there's some flaw in the way that you're going to conduct the research, there's some flaw in your thinking of what to expect and so on and so forth. So then it can help you go back to the drawing board and revamp all that before you get to, you know, really doing a full on board study with a bunch of subjects, okay? And so, again, it can take you back to the drawing board, and that's not a bad thing. Okay? Some people are looking at this like, nah, man, I won't do that. It's just going to have more work. You know, we're not, you know, I know some of y'all are looking at research to help you get your master's or your PhD diploma. And so more work doesn't sound like fun. But again, if you're trying to make a difference, yeah, more work is important many times, right? So again, scientific theory is an explanation of some aspect of the natural world that's based on numerous research studies, all confirming given phenomena. So the strength is going to depend on the extent to which the theory has been tested under different conditions. So can you test it? Can you test it again with this type of population? Can you test it under this similar but different condition? You know, does it hold true in all regards? You know, so something would be like, this type of exercise is best for most people. Okay, well, did you test it in most people? Did you test it, you know, like, did you test it in different, you know, like environments maybe? Like, okay, well, if it's best for most people, you know, did people in like controlled, you know, inside gym versus outside in the heat, you know, things like that? Or can you do it out in the cold? Can you do it in the wind? You know, whatever it is, you know, like you did so many different extents, you know, or this is the best way to train an athlete to be fast. Well, does it work for all athletes? Because again, what are you doing? Is it linear? You know, are we looking at just like folks that, you know, like sprinters that take off and they go straight? You know, we're looking at, you know, like, is this going to help out those that have to make a lot of lateral movements that maybe have to run forward and backward, right? You know, is this training for all athletes, or is this training specifically for those athletes? Okay. Again, it can be improved, refined as more research is conducted. And again, not a guess or a hunch. It's an or they say not an educated guess and not a hypothesis, right? So again, the scientific theories are based on the body of the research. So again, you have the educated guess, which is your hypothesis, right? But once you've done the research and once more people have done the research and then you've done more research and everybody else puts this together, it creates these scientific theories. So the theories come about based on numerous research studies, right? So, you know, and again, are there some weak scientific theories out there, maybe based on like one or two research things, or based on, you know, very little research and, you know, speculation based? Those things happen. Again, they shouldn't really be considered scientific theory, but it is out there. And again, some things it's just, you know, we can't necessarily research, you know, some of it's like, okay, this is as far as we know. Unfortunately, you know, we can only get like 20-30% because it's maybe something that's happened in the past and there's no way to really witness that phenomenon, right? And so with that being said, yeah, we've got like 20% of the information and they're basing it. And to be honest, I don't know that you can really call that scientific theory, but a lot of times that stuff is there, and a lot of times that stuff, because it's historical, gets thrown into a lot of science textbooks as well. Okay? Again, why is it important to understand the findings of related studies before planning a new study? Because one, you don't want to do the exact same thing. Two, if you don't understand what they did, you may make a lot of mistakes in the way that you're doing what you're doing, even though it's different, right? What are the characteristics of a good research question or problem? You know, That's sort of up to you. I mean, one, is it important? Is it going to lead to, like, especially in our fields, are you doing it just to answer a question? Like sometimes, you got that thing like, who's that actress that was in that movie? It's like, is it really that important? Well, it might be important to you at that, especially that particular time. But I mean, is this going to be important to mankind, right? Um, and especially in our field, that's really what we're going for. So, you know, what's the reason in doing this? Okay, so is it a good research question or problem, right? Or are you just doing something so that you can, get your diploma? Are you doing something that's pretty much already been answered and done before? Are you lending anything new to research, right? Um, what's included in your methodology for the research study? Well, I skipped one, sorry. How does a research hypothesis relate to the research question? Okay, so do you think you're going to see a difference? Do you not think you're going to see a difference? Do you think you're going to see something positive? Do you think you're going to see something negative? How does that work? What's included in the methodology? So, what are other things to put in there to, see what you expect to see? What did you put in there to control for anything that might affect it that you don't want it to affect? Because it's going to lead to questions like, well, was it your experiment or was it this, right? The concepts of internal and external validity. So, did you control for everything you could control for internally? And again, how far can you extend out the generalities of your study? Like that can you generalize them out. Why is the statistical analysis of the research data essential? Again, because, the way I'd answer that is because without doing the statistical analysis, we don't know is it significant or not. Just because there's a change, like, okay, we got a group that's taking supplements and working out and a group not taking supplements, but as they all work out, they all see, their muscle mass go up. Well, without statistical analysis, we might think, okay, well, this group got more, but when you really do the statistical analysis, it's like, yeah, but it didn't really make a difference. These folks actually started, one of the things is in your group, you may actually have a group that just started out, like maybe they start out, they were slightly less trained. And so the fact that they were less trained, they saw greater jumps in this group that, even though you randomly assigned, like if you look at the questionnaires and everything, yeah, these folks have actually been weight training and stuff for a while, so they didn't change as much, right? So maybe there's some things in there, right? And again, the statistical analysis can help regulate some of these things. Okay. And again, we talked about why pilot testing is important, right? It'll help you work out all your kinks before you actually go forth with your study. Right? Basic research is conducted purely for the discovery of new knowledge, with little regard for whether there's an immediate application for that new knowledge. Again, that's like I told you, there's a lot of basic research out there. It kind of, almost makes it like, sometimes basic research might be pointless research. I mean, sometimes it's important and it leads to more aha ideas. But yeah, sometimes it's something that leads, it's a road to nowhere, right? So you're like, I guess what we found out. Who cares, right? You never know. Sometimes when you jump into some of the basic research stuff, it's like, somebody will ask you, oh, so okay, that sounds really crazy and interesting, and what's that going to do? We actually have no idea what implication it's going to have. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. Right? Applied research is driven by the need to find a solution to a specific problem. So again, in our realm, we pretty much, or at least, like when I'm reading research, this is all I read is applied research. I'm always looking at like, how does this affect people? How does this affect, how does this affect them in weight loss or weight gain or their physical performance or their health or their fitness or whatever else? Okay. So again, this is sort of playing on that, like, this guy's looking at mouse chromosomes for whatever reason, like maybe trying to figure out how to keep, like, is there something in the life that you want to keep your house or something like that? And the wife's like, look, can you just invent a mouse trap so we can get rid of them? You know, he's more interested in discovering something, but it may not necessarily be applicable to his current situation, right? Um, so here's some of the things, you know, that are kind of funny. There's a lot of them out there, and again, we may during our discussions go through some of these. So um, these are the Golden Fleece Awards, given to federally funded research appearing to lack practical application. So in March 1975, the National Science Foundation uh, gave grant for spending 84,000 trying to find out why people fall in love, right? So I don't know what the, you know, again, what's the practical application of that? You know, I mean, people fall in love. We know people fall in love. You know, again, sometimes, it, you know, like you can look at two people, all right, that makes sense. Sometimes you're like, that really doesn't make any sense. Or, you know, I mean, how many, you know, how many times, you know, like, especially in your single life, you're like, you know, like for me in particular, like, well, why should like him and not me? Doesn't make any sense, right? You know, we know there's a chemical thing. We know there's all, you know, there's all kinds of different things that attract, and sometimes the attractions don't make sense, right? You know, again, there's certain people that you see like in Hollywood that you're like, okay, that particular guy, most guys and girls say, oh yeah, he's attractive. That particular guy, most guys and girls say, yeah, he's attractive or she's attractive, right? But then there's some people they're like, yeah, I don't really see it. And they're like, I really think that this actress or this actor is attractive. And you're like, really? You know, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to most people, but it makes sense to them for whatever reason, right? October 1975. Apparently, a lot of weird stuff in the 70s. There are some newer ones. We always this is a kind of a fun thing that we do for this class. National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism spent millions of dollars to find out if inebriated fish are more aggressive than sober fish, if young rats are more likely than adult rats to drink alcohol in order to reduce anxiety. I don't know how you can measure that. And if rats can be systematically turned into alcoholics. Why? Don't I? I'm sure somebody had some thought process of how they could relate this back, but that could have been better funded research and actually, like, you know, again, you don't want to try to get somebody to become an alcoholic in humans, but, you know, like taking folks that have those issues and like actually spending the research and like, what can we do to help you, right? What can we, you know, who cares if inebriated fish I don't know. I guess maybe unless you have a fish tank issue where you got a fish getting picked on a lot, maybe you're like, you know, got to get him drunk and you got to help him out, and then he can stand up to the other bully fish. I don't know. 1977, Department of Agriculture spent nearly 46,000 to find out how long it takes to cook breakfast. What does it matter? You know, I guess unless you're, you know, people are like, look, you know, it's really important so that I can get to work on time, that my breakfast time, you know, it only takes me 10 minutes to make it, you know, or else, you know, I'm not getting up any earlier, you know. But 1977, Law Enforcement Assistance Administration spent nearly 27,000 to determine why inmates want to escape from prison. I think that's pretty obvious. I don't know. December 1978, Office of Education for spending $219,592 to develop a curriculum package to teach college students how to watch TV. Apparently, the college students watch TV incorrectly. I don't know. You know, I mean, a bit ridiculous, right? That's out there, and again, we'll see what new things have been coming out in recent years. So we'll look some of that up for class. Translational research, specific to studies in which a finding from basic research is first investigated in humans. So again, we can, you know, like now take a basic one and now we can start moving it more into the, you know, the applied research, right? It's common for research related to clinical applications to start with animal subjects to ensure safety and efficacy. Research protocols before it's applied to humans. So again, you see this a lot of times when it comes to like drug companies coming up with like either vaccines or some type of like high blood pressure drug or whatever else, you know. If they really don't know when they first make it, you can't, you know, they're like, okay, let's see, is this thing like going to be straight up poison? You give it to a rat, you know, and dies. that, again, some people, I know some of y'all might be like keto folks, and you're like, you shouldn't have that. Well, we hold, I would think most people, not all people, most people would hold a human's life above the rest. I mean, so that's why they do a lot of those studies. Okay. So, they'll give this, rats these drugs. They look, does it kill them? Okay, it's not killing them. Okay, that's cool. Two, okay, what effects does it have on their system? Okay, and so after, so you're like, look, if this dose, which is the same dose we're going to give a human, is not killing the rats, and the rats got a smaller body, and then metabolism, effectively, what, we don't know exactly what this is going to do in the human body when it comes to like actually fixing the problem, but we can now eliminate the fact that it shouldn't kill them based on the dose, right? So they'll do that, and then they'll move forward with things, and then eventually be able to give that drug and dose to humans, right? Quantitative research dependent variables are numerical. This means that you can add number values to what you find. Enables description of existing conditions, analysis of relationships among different variables, study cause and effect relationships, begins with identifying the way the hypothesis can be tested through collection statistical analysis of numerical data, and includes a relatively large number of observations or data so that the results can be viewed as indicative of the status of the population at large that the study participants represent. Again, you're taking that and you're looking at it like, okay, we took a sample of this population, we can extrapolate it out and say we think this would happen in a larger number of that population, right? So the population at large of who they represent, right? And that's the thing of who they represent based on who you have, okay? Qualitative has dependent variables are non-numerical. So this collection of observations by researchers through first-hand on-site note-taking, analysis of video tapes, audio tapes, in-depth interviews, research design questionnaires, enables ongoing formulation of hypothesis and methodology as the study progresses, since the characteristics of the practical settings and study participants may influence the way in which the data collection can proceed. Seeks to identify trends and patterns in the data. Okay, so again, sometimes you can have quantitative and qualitative overlap in some research designs where you do a little bit of both. But again, this one, those of you that like want like answers, a lot of times people don't like being qualitative because you're like, I'm not getting my data answer. No, it's still important. There's still a lot of things that we've learned, actually, from both. Both are very important. And in my field, in nutrition and fitness and everything, there's so many aspects. We can look at, everything from what happens, like with organs as you do things, like how do they adapt to exercise and nutrition, all that. We can look at like the muscles, the skeleton. We can look at movement patterns. So now we're going from physiology to kinesiology. We can look at, things that have to do with the mixture of kinesiology with how, you react to the environment around you, the environment reacts on you. So now we're adding some biomechanics, some physics with that, as well as, well, why do people tend to do this versus this, knowing all these things. Now we're looking at psychology, right? And so again, there's such a mix of different sciences that go into the fitness and nutrition realm that you're going to have a good mix of both qualitative, quantitative, and some actual research that will overlap in both. Okay. Again, experimental research is there to try to confirm or refute cause and effect relationships. You try to achieve an understanding involves measuring the effects of an independent variable on the dependent. Descriptive research is non-experimental, but it does not involve, because it doesn't involve manipulation of independent variables. General goal is to provide detailed, useful description of characteristics of a population group or an individual. Again, a lot of times, quantitative, and here's the thing, I'm definitely leaning more towards quantitative stuff. I just like it. But I can see, like I've met quantitative folks that look at qualitative and they're like, it's not really the research. But again, if you read this and you really look at descriptive research and a lot of qualitative stuff in descriptive, a lot of times you're looking at what's happening in the real world, and again, you're observing what's happening. And sometimes what you observe happen takes you into doing some quantitative stuff, like, because you're like, all right, let's control for some things and see what we see. And then we come back to the real world and then we take it back into the lab. And again, they can coincide and coexist and actually help each other in our understanding of things, right? So again, descriptive can be quantitative, qualitative, or mixed, right? The case study is a descriptive research focus on an individual's specific characteristics. Again, not a lot of strength in case studies, but definitely they're still important, because sometimes if you have somebody that's got something very, very rare going on, you're not going to be able to recruit a lot of people. So you observe and see what's going on with this particular person. Okay. Correlational, form of descriptive research conducted to evaluate the relationship between two or more variables, sometimes conducted for purposes of prediction. So again, sometimes we do correlation, and then from there we start, because here's the thing, just because two things go up at the same time, or one thing goes up and something goes down, doesn't mean that it's a cause and effect. It doesn't mean that this caused this. And again, it could be, so let's say there is a cause and effect. Well, is A causing B or is B causing A, right? So, it could go either way. And again, a lot of times just because two things go up doesn't mean that they're going up because of each other. So, for example, an example I remember from my master's program, it still sticks in my head, is one of my physiology professors said, okay, you've got, you could do an experiment on folks with their shoe size, and, your hypothesis could be that people with larger shoe size have better basketball skills. So you could run an experiment and have folks do dribbling and shooting and all this other stuff. Now, he said, you're probably going to find that that's going to hold true, and again, I can't remember if he was given as a hypothetical or somebody actually did this to prove this point. But, if you systematically think about it without actually doing the experiment, that's probably going to hold true. Now, again, does the shoe size have anything to do with the basketball skills? No. The size of your foot doesn't make you a better basketball player, but in general, folks that have bigger feet tend to be taller. Folks that are taller tend to have a general advantage in a sport like basketball, where vertical height is definitely an advantage for, rebounding, blocking shots, dunking, and so on and so forth. Therefore, anybody in a certain age group, so if you take somebody like in their early 30s or in late 20s, and say you're taking folks that are not collegiate basketball players or professional basketball players, but you do that, there's probably a good chance that those folks, because they were taller, probably might have played on high school basketball teams. They probably got to spend more time getting trained on those skills versus folks that have much smaller shoe sizes. Because they have smaller shoe sizes, they might have been shorter. And again, they might have been discouraged from playing basketball because of their height. So by the time they got through elementary school, it was much more difficult for them to try to make the junior high or middle school teams and so on and so forth. So they went a different route, something like that. So again, it's not that shoe size or foot size in itself has anything to do with basketball skills. It's just, when you can really reason it out, these are folks that were just pushed through and, they got more opportunities to hone their basketball skills over that time just because they're taller, right? And again, it's not even the height of them makes them more skill set. It's, at that point, it's just they spend more time doing it, right? So again, you could see that correlation, and that's a very realistic correlation, but shoe size does not equal basketball skills, nor does basketball skills make you have a bigger shoe size. So they don't, just because they correlate, there's no causation there. There's no cause and effect. Okay? You got to kind of do like one of these to get to the cause and effect with that, right? Analytical research, form descriptive qualitative research involves systematic evals of existing information with the goal of advancing new understanding of that info. Meta-analysis have gotten pretty huge lately. And again, part of it's just because there's a lot of research out there on certain things. And when you add all those numbers together, it really paints a big picture. You know, again, it's one of those, like, sometimes it's sort of like a lazy research thing to do, but I'm going to be honest with you. A lot of times when I'm quoting, or not quoting research, but if I'm going to add it into my lib review, I like the meta-analysis. You know, I appreciate when y'all do it. Not something I'm interested in doing. You know, I'd rather be in the lab doing stuff, but it's important because you take what everybody's been doing in the lab or whatever he's been doing out in the field, and you make a large population, a large group, and you get to then reanalyze it statistically, and you're like, look, we are seeing this happen, you know, and again, it adds more clarity to all the individual studies that are on something, right? Again, check your understanding. Can research study be both basic and applied? You know, what's your thoughts on that? What causes the design of a study to be described as mixed? And describe the difference between non-experimental research, or the different types of non-experimental research, right? So, importance of research in kinesiology and health sciences. So the things that we're really looking at, or a lot of things that are being looked at right now, is advancing practice in related professions such as health promotion, nutrition, dietetics, health, physical education, adaptive physical education, physical therapy, athletic training, personal training, you know, improving performance, you know, like looking at, you know, if we take it into athletic realms, you know, what can we do to make our athletes better? You know, now we're looking at athlete health, you know, again, like I said, there's a lot of concussion research out there for, you know, those athletes that go through concussions and so on and so forth. So there, you know, there's a lot of applications out there in our particular field. And there's a lot of things in different aspects of what we look at get crossed over, okay? And so again, you know, trying to figure out what makes people healthy, what makes them perform best, you know, all that can play into, you know, overall health over a lifetime, or how people can be successful in what they're doing in a short period of time as well. Okay? So again, that's the intro. As you can tell, I'm really, I don't know, I guess maybe I'm a huge nerd when it comes to research. I see a lot of, just a lot of benefit in it. It's something I think is very important. It's something that I feel, if you're going to be in fitness, nutrition, sports, and all that, you know, if you're not conducting it, you need to be aware of how to find good research. And for this class, because this is a bachelor's level class, we're going to go over both aspects of it. So, you know, again, you're not going to particularly get any opportunity in your program at Kaiser for us to do research. So you will have plenty of opportunities. We're going to show you can find research in your classes, and use that research to make good arguments for or against things. But also, you're going to move, you know, many of you have told me that you want to further your education after this. And so you're going to get plenty of opportunity to do research if you do that. And so understanding how to do that, the importance of how to go about doing that and all that, you're going to learn that, and you're going to understand, you know, if you're doing what the different statistical analysis, we'll go over things like that, and really dive into this. And it's, again, in science, I think it's, you know, at the heart of what's very important in science to, for not only new discoveries, but to really strengthen, you know, some of the things that we found in science, and to negate any of the bad theories that are out there, or a lot of the misinformation, you know, or, you know, like you'll hear it in fitness and like all the bro science that's out there, right? So again, you know, that's into chapter 1. If you guys have questions, you know how to get a hold of me.